Today, I want to tell you why you, as a fan of the Horus Heresy, might be interested in playing Emperor of the Fading Suns. Now, I know this is a bit of a departure from our usual content on this channel, but I want to share a piece of my childhood with you. And I just saw a few days ago videos on YouTube coming out about how this game has received an enhanced edition, and it sort of drew my eye. And it made me think that it might be fun to do a semi regular series of videos on the channel about Horus Heresy adjacent content. And I think we'll call it something like the Grimdark Media Review. And I'll just talk about a piece of media that has inspired me or affected my outlook and my viewpoint. And hopefully, you'll feel the same. And especially this game, Emperor of the Fading Suns, I think as a fan of the Horus Heresy and hopefully as a fan of the tactical, strategic viewpoint that we take on this channel, that you'll find this interesting and maybe try to play this game for yourself. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not an expert at this game by any means. It is something that I had wanted to play when I was a kid, but for whatever reason, I think this when I finally got a hold of a CD, it wouldn't work on the computer that I had at the time, and so it didn't work out. But now I've had a chance to come back to it, and it works on Steam, and it's everything more or less that I had hoped for when I was much younger. So, what is Emperor of the Fading Suns? Well, it's a old, and when I say old, I mean older than Civilization 2. So, it's pretty old. It's a 4X game, and it's actually based on a role playing game from the 90s, which is, I think it's just called the Fading Suns role playing game. And it has a lot of thematic elements that are shared in common with particularly 40K, but just the whole uh, universe that Games Workshop has established in general, and particularly also with Dune, which of course 40K has taken a lot of inspiration from as well. So there's a thematic relevance there. You may enjoy just the setting of it, which is quite intricate and developed. And I think, in a way, has a lot of unique and really interesting elements that I think you may find very interesting. And um, it also has some tactical and strategic relevance to our interests in the Horus Heresy, right? And the main thing is that this is a 4X game that is focused around interstellar combat, strategic combat. And so I think, at least in the little bit that I've played so far, that it really does a great job of showing the strategic and tactical problems of fighting on a planet with starships, being part of the tactical situation of having to worry about maintaining control of orbit and the tactical problems that come when perhaps you lose control of the orbit and now enemy has the high ground essentially over your entire force. So that's enough of me talking. Let's take a look at the game real quick. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to start a new game for you. And we have a couple of options here. We can start a historical game, a random game, or load a custom map. And a random map, just it's exactly what it sounds. It has a random galaxy, which you'll see what that looks like here in a minute. And then loading a custom map, obviously you can create your own map and play on it. I think historical makes the most sense, especially if we're just getting started. Now, here's where we get some of the thematic resonances, right? You can play as one of 5 different houses. Now, I'm not too spun up on the lore here for each of the 5 houses. We're going to play as Lee Halan, which is I think the default house because you get some advantages, which we'll see here in a minute. But you can also play as the Hazat, the Dekados, the Hawkwood, and the Al Malik. And you can do this either in hot seat, which I don't know if anybody would do that anymore, or you can have the computer controlled AI run it. You can also play multiplayer now, I think by email, and maybe one or two other options. Now, I will say this is a very long game. Um, I think somebody said 80 hours. So this is definitely not a game that is for you have a light evening, and you want to knock out a game of Emperor of the Fading Suns. Anyway, let's move on here. So you can set the beginner difficulty. What this does is as far as I can tell, it limits the number of traits that each house gets. And those positive and negative traits sort of affect how difficult the game is for you. So we're not going to mess with that right now. You've got some options down here at the bottom. The plague I haven't really encountered yet. I understand it's a fairly difficult challenge. Um, I'm not sure if it's like a galactic event, or I believe there are weapons. There are like biological weapons with the plague that you can employ against other players. And unless you have the right research and the right technology, it is very difficult to eradicate. Based on some other conditions, your units and cities can rebel. And then the rest of this stuff is pretty self explanatory. These two options down here at the bottom, though, are very important. And I think part of what make the game so uniquely strategic and compelling. And I've seen people recommend that you turn these off when you're a beginner. I don't know. I mean, it makes it easier, but I also think it takes away a lot of the charm and the interest from the game. And so let me explain why. For the universal warehouse, basically what that means is you can access all of your resources anywhere in the galaxy. So any unit, any city, any planet that you control has access to every resource that you've ever collected, and that's stored in your bank. If you turn the universal warehouse off, that is no longer the case. So if you have a planet that cannot grow food, or can't mine metal, or can't produce electronics, you're sunk. Um, you're going to have to import that if you can't build it organically and locally on that planet. So, I mean, that's how it would be in quote unquote real life, right? And so I think uh, keeping this off really is part of why I think this game is so compelling and would be interesting to somebody who is interested in the Horus Heresy and is interested in those strategic and tactical problems of conducting an interstellar military campaign, which of course logistics would be a huge challenge in something like that. Consuming food, you can turn that off. So in this game, your units especially will consume food. If they don't have food, then there's going to be big problems, right? So if you have consuming food on and universal warehouse off, if you conduct a planetary invasion, you're going to have to bring food with you to supply your forces while they're on the planet. And if you lose control of the orbit over the planet, your forces are going to be in big trouble unless you can somehow establish farms or some other kind of food production on the planet. So I think you can kind of see how some of that depth is starting to develop here. So we're going to leave consume food on and universal warehouse off, and we're going to hit play. So in case you're wondering, I've turned the sound off just because I don't really have a good streamer set up to show a video and have you guys hear the system audio. I'm not a huge fan of the music anyway, so I don't think it's a too big of a deal. So you do have an advisor. There is kind of a tutorial. I think it's pretty inadequate. Um, and in fact, I really did bounce off the game kind of the first time I loaded it. And it was just too much. There's especially the controls are backwards from what we're used to in more modern games. And so it was just, I just kind of bounced off it, but I gave it some time and I got used to it pretty quickly. So I'm going to turn off the tutorial for the purposes of this demonstration. So you can choose one of three portraits. I don't think this really has any particular effect on the game. You get three portraits for each of the other factions, of the other houses. Now, these are all the positive and negative traits that you can get. So one of the big advantages of the Lihalan are they have 3 advances in technology for advanced physics, bioengineering, and psychosocial engineering. So the other houses don't necessarily get that. So you're starting off with 9 technologies that the other houses may not necessarily possess. And there are some other ones. Um, this is interesting, but really not why we're looking at the game. So again, technology here, and you can see a planetary map or a galactic map here, and this is a map of your homeworld, and then your house icon, of course. So we're gonna research composite armor. Okay, now this is something I haven't talked about. Religion is a big part of this game. There is a galactic church, and the church has different sects within it. So it's very important which sect the patriarch of the church belongs to, because each of your units and each planet, in fact, can have a different sect. And if the sect is different from the dominant sect that is represented by the patriarch, then you can have, I think, loyalty issues, and there can be rebellions and all of that stuff that you would expect from religious internal conflict. So let's take a look at this screen here. This is Byzantium 2, which is the capital world of the empire. And so the basic setting of the game is that humanity has sort of conquered the galaxy. They built these gates to facilitate interstellar travel and established sort of this interstellar empire. The emperor has just been assassinated, and now nobody knows really who did it or why. And this is Byzantium 2, the throne world here. And you can see right here up top is sort of the imperial palace, right? Which is now being governed by just the bureaucrats of the empire, I guess. Um, and you can see there's a shield, right, which protects these 6 hexes from orbital bombardment. And there's these various forts and factories which produce units and provide combat bonuses. And then a palace, I believe, collects the revenue for the entire planet. So if you lose control of the palace, you're going to lose control of the revenue of a planet. So what's interesting about this is that each of the 5 houses maintain a fortification on Byzantium 2, essentially surrounding the imperial palace. And over here on the left, you can see all of the units that are available in the fort. And so we have a freighter, a noble, 2 PTS missile launchers, which are orbital defense weapons. PTS stands for planet to space missile launcher. So if a spaceship attempts to bombard any of the hexes with a PTS missile launcher, they're going to have to fight that PTS missile launcher before they can bombard any of your other units. We also have some armor legions, which are basically power armor soldiers, and then some anti-aircraft guns, anti-tank guns, artillery, and then we have a cargo pod, which is full of food, which is going to supply our forces. So why is this important? Well, you have to have a noble on Byzantium 2 in order to vote, and that is part of the strategy of the game, because the whole point of the game is to become emperor. And to become emperor, you have to be elected to be the imperial regent. And you have to hold that position basically until you are ready to declare yourself emperor. And I think you have to hold it for at least 2 elections, which are each 10 years apart. So you have to hold the imperial regency for 20 years and then declare yourself emperor and then fight off everybody else as they try to kill you. And that's how you win the game. Now, these 3 things down here are the different offices that you can either occupy yourself or hand out to the other houses to get them to support you in your bid to become imperial regent. So you can, let's see. So let's start with the stigmata, I guess. Now there is a alien-ish faction in this game called the symbiotes, or symbiotes, and they are a very unusual combination of sort of, they're almost psychic Borg, but more biological, where they can absorb biological material, almost like the Thing from the John Carpenter's The Thing. So it's very, scary, very cool idea. I think it's also very similar to the Homeworld expansion. Between Homeworld and Homeworld 2, there was a faction of sort of this biological plague that was discovered and sort of almost takes over the galaxy. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The Stigmata Garrison is a small fleet, I believe, and a large army, which basically quarantines the symbiotes, and keeps them out of the greater part of the Empire. So it's a very powerful force, and controlling it gives you a lot of power. Because, of course, theoretically, if you're maybe less scrupulous, you can take that force and then abandon the garrison and use it to seize power, or fight, the other noble houses. The Imperial Eye is another office that you can hold, and it does have some military power, but the main thing is that you get to have a fort on every planet's home, or excuse me, every house's home planet, which, I think you can imagine, right, how influential and powerful that would be. So that gives you a lot of intelligence about what the other houses are doing, and what condition they're in. And then the last and maybe the most powerful office that you can hold is that of the commander of the Imperial fleet. And spaceships, starships are very rare and valuable in this game, very hard to build. And if you lose them, it's very damaging to your strategic plans. And the Imperial fleet is, maybe at least at the start, maybe with the exception of the guild and church fleets, is the most powerful fleet in the game. So having control of that is an incredibly useful thing. And then, of course, we just have the diplomacy screens down here, which you can talk to the other house leaders. Now, this is kind of one of the gripes of the game, or that I have with the game, and maybe it's a little unfair for a game that is from 1997. But the diplomacy is pretty flavorless. Like, you can barter, you can have all these things that you can offer, and you can provide incentives, in order to try to get people to support you for various reasons, like in war, politics, and so on. And so anyway, this is sort of the heart of the game here. And let's go back to Byzantium 2. So maybe thinking about that, you can sort of almost think about some strategies on how to win the game, because you have to get votes in order to become the imperial regent. You have to have more votes than any of the competition. You are only able to vote if you have a noble in your fort, or maybe just on Byzantium 2. So let's think about that for a minute. If Universal Warehouse is off and food is on, if you could blockade Byzantium 2, you could starve the other houses into submission. If they no longer have a noble on the planet, they can't vote. So you would be, if I'm understanding the game correctly, again, I said I'm not an expert, but by starving them out, you could install yourself as the Imperial Regent because you have more votes by default. Now, maybe something that I didn't explain is that everybody has 5 votes. So let's go to the galactic map here, and you can see these are all the different planets. So this is a very big map, although maybe compared to something like Stellaris, it's not that big. But this is the galactic map. So this is Byzantium 2 here, where the white box is, and you can see maybe why it's the capital, right? All of these blue lines are radiating out from it, showing the different jump links between the capital and the different planets. So we'll go down here to the left and down, and this is our home planet, Kish. So let's click on it, and it takes us down to the planet surface. Now, so something you can kind of see here is that every planet in the game has a fully realized planetary surface, which I don't think most, if any, SpaceX games do. And so that's part of why this game is so unique. Because if you're going to conquer a planet, there's not just this abstract auto battler where you land a bunch of troops on the planet and they kind of duke it out, and you take the planet or you get repelled. No, there's actually a whole strategic layer on the planet's surface where you have to maneuver your forces and try to take the palace in order to secure the revenue. And from what I can tell, at least it's not that easy to do. So here's our palace, and it's protected by a shield. And let's look at a couple of these units. We were talking about votes just a minute ago, and this is what gives you votes: the scepters. And these are physical things. It's not like a house just has 5 votes because it's a noble house. No, it has a vote because it has a scepter, and scepters can be stolen and seized in combat and maybe destroyed. I don't know. But if you are able to take somebody else's scepters, you get votes and they no longer have votes. And so that's one element of the conquest part of the game, is that by taking these scepters or hiding them or stealing them, you can either accrue more votes to yourself um, or prevent others from stealing them from you. And so that's part of the politics of the game, right? So each house has 5. You can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there are also a couple of other factions that have votes. So we have the other 4 major houses. There's also the League and the Church. The League is sort of the trading guild, so they have a certain amount of power. They have 5 votes, but they cannot themselves become the Imperial Regent. So you can ask the trading guild to embargo other houses. They can loan money to you. They also have a war chest. So the more stuff you buy from the league or from the guild, the more money that they have. Eventually, they will declare a new republic, and they will use their powerful fleet and their war chest. I think it's something like 300,000. I think the money's called Firebirds. They will use that money and their powerful fleet to try to conquer the galaxy and bring about a republican government. There's also the church, which also has 5 votes, and they have a different sort of power, right? They have control of the Inquisitors and the Inquisition. Okay, so there's another sort of similarity to 40K. And then these are all of the different sects which are part of the game, and different sects have different political impact on the game. I haven't really delved into this too much, but I mean, it kind of shows you how complex the game is. So if you have a planet that is a different sect from your, the noble house that you control, then you're going to have loyalty issues. And then we also have the vow, which maybe remind us some of the Tau. Um, uh, they're sort of mysterious aliens who exist kind of down here on the edge of imperial space, and they're very highly technologically advanced, and they don't really care for our technology or trading goods of any kind, actually. um, and so they really are only interested in map data, so you can sell that to them. I haven't interacted too much with them, but they're sort of over here on the edge of space, and up here is where the symbiotes are, and that's where the Stigmata garrison is. So we're here kind of in the center. And so when the game starts, let's move on to maybe some of the more important things, more relevant things, now that we kind of have gone over the basics. So you can sort of see we've got a farm here, we've got the church, the factory, the shield. This fort here is controlled by the Imperial Eye, and then this agora is controlled by the trading guild. So you can move here and buy stuff from them, and then the fort's just keeping an eye on us. So the interesting thing about this game is you can build engineers. They can go and build other things like farms, but all of these are considered cities. So even though it's called a farm, you can actually build units like other engineers, anti-tank guns, artillery. Um, Now, what's interesting is you'll notice that as we begin the game, most of our home planet is actually unexplored. We can only really see this area, and that's partially because the planet is in rebellion right now. So I've got a bunch of units here in this fort, and you can see I've got some armor, some self-propelled artillery, anti-aircraft, an anti-tank gun, some regular artillery, and a militia legion. Now, you can see by this number in the top right corner that obviously these tanks and these self-propelled artillery move fairly quickly. These guys are going to move 8x's, whereas the militia and these towed, these towed field pieces essentially move very slowly. So for us to get up here to attack this city is going to take, a couple turns. And I don't particularly want to wait that long. So you can see here we've got a bit more of a detailed breakdown of what's going on. Now, one of the I don't know if anybody is a World War II history buff, but one of the funny things about this game is that essentially, if you can see up here in the right hand corner, a lot of the units have 3D renders of what they're supposed to look like. But they are, in fact, lightly adapted versions of a lot of World War II equipment, particularly German equipment. Like this is a Panther tank, pretty clearly. And then obviously this is an 88. And then looks like a pack. I forget what the model is, but with the 88 gun on it. So anyway, it's just sort of amusing. I kind of would have liked maybe a bit more of a unique approach, but for a 1997 game, I think we can cut a little bit of slack. But anyway, back to what we're doing, right? I have a bunch of armor. I have some self-propelled artillery. And down here in my palace, I have some infantry, and I have nobles, and I have a bunch of regular artillery. Now, I want artillery, I want armor, and I want infantry to attack this city. And the only problem is that all my real good, my better infantry is down here in the palace. And it's going to take them a long time to move up to a position where they can attack this city here. And I don't particularly want to wait that long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my control of the orbital space around this planet to exact or enact my strategic goals here. Because I need energy in order to expand the planetary economy, and this is a quick and easy way to do it. So, how are we going to affect this plan? Well, let's go up into space and let's select our fleet here. We've got a couple of frigates, we've got a cruiser, we've got 2 assault landers, and a bulk hauler. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use our cruiser to conduct an orbital bombardment of the city, and we're going to use the assault landers and the bulk hauler to transport our soldiers. So let's go down here. Let's select our 2 assault landers and our bulk hauler, and then we're going to click on the planet. We're going to go down here. Excuse me. We're going to just do the 2 assault landers, and we're going to land at the palace. And then we're going to go back into space. We're going to get our bulk hauler. We're going to land at the fort. Okay. And we're going to go into the army screen. Now you can see we've got the bulk hauler here. Got a neat little spaceship render. And you can see by this icon here that it can carry up to 4 units. So we've got tanks, we've got self-propelled artillery, and so we're going to load by clicking and dragging our artillery and our tanks into the bulk hauler. Okay. And then we're going to get out of here and we're going to go back down to our palace. We're going to go into the army screen with the assault landers, and we're going to load a nobleman and all of our infantry into, whoops, I can only carry 2. So we've got all of our troops landed. Now I've got my assault landers selected. I'm going to boost them back into space. And then I'm going to go back down here. I'm going to go to the fort. I'm going to select my bulk hauler. I'm going to boost it into space. I'm going to select all of these, go back down, and I'm going to land right next to my target. Now this tooltip is warning me that I've chosen to land on a non-city space. Okay, which means that my bulk hauler is going to take some damage. It's not that much damage. So for the purposes of getting started quickly, I'm not sure how much of a disadvantage it is. I don't know how difficult it is to repair ships in this game. I know it is very difficult to build new ones. But for the purposes of quickly taking control of my home planet, I think suffering a little bit of damage to my bulk hauler is justified. So we're going to go ahead and click yes. And we're going to click yes again to unload everything. And before we attack, though, we're going to go back up into space. Now you can see the green bar here showing the health. So it has taken a fair bit of damage. Now the assault landers do not have that restriction. So they can land anywhere and not take any damage. But of course, they're only able to transport 2 units. So just to soften the target, we're going to go back up. We're going to select our fleet, and we're going to select our Vlad cruiser. Now, the frigates are not able to conduct orbital bombardments. Their weapons are not strong enough. And so we're going to go back down here. Oh, I messed up. We're going to right or left click, and we're going to hit attack. And we're going to bombard the planet. We're going to bombard it again and again. So we were able to destroy the anti-aircraft artillery. It's not a huge deal, but it does take out 1 additional unit that we don't have to deal with our ground forces. Now, one thing that I would have liked to have seen in this game is that bombardment doesn't seem to do any damage to the city itself. I think that would make sense. That would give you a reason maybe not to bombard too much and have to go in and take it over with your ground forces. But anyway, we're going to go back down here. And we're going to select our army. We're going to select everybody. And we are then going to advance into the city. And we're just going to assault. And we're going to let the battle play out. And we pretty much destroyed the army in the city. So we're going to hit combat done, and then we're going to go and move up and occupy it. Now, this enemy unit retreated. I'm going to select one of my infantry troops. Now, because it retreated, I can now move over it and take control of the unit. It essentially defects to my house. So morale does play an important part in the game. So I think that's the main thing, that those are the main elements that I wanted to show you. I mean, this is a very simple demonstration, obviously, and I don't have a game going where I'm invading a planet. There are other Let's Plays and videos on YouTube if you're curious to see how that goes. There are other videos that are showing more advanced gameplay and more strategic depth. But I'm sort of hopeful that this gives you a taste for what the game is like. And I mean, I have not encountered a game that gives that real in-depth, visceral understanding of how powerful it would be in order to control the orbit around a planet. And the one thing that's maybe a little bit less powerful here is that you really can't scout with your spaceships, with your starships. You really have to find stuff on the ground with your ground units. Depending on, like if we look at this unit here, every unit has a camo ability and a spot ability. So the higher the camo, the harder the unit is to spot. So I'm not really sure if a starship, I guess we could just go look. So it does have a spot. I don't know if that actually will apply to, um, you know, ground targets. Maybe it's just for orbital or space targets. But that's neither here nor there. You could just imagine, I think, based on this simple example, if you land a force on a planet, you really need to control the space around it. I don't know if you have like different orbital layers. That maybe is a little complex. So I'm not sure there's that level of complexity in fighting over control of the orbit of the planet. It seems like this is more focused on the ground combat anyway. But you can, I think, really see how important it is, because not only are you able to conduct orbital bombardments, but the mobility that you have is so, I mean, crucial. Like you can just pick up your troops. I could pick them up from this well, and I could move them all the way to the other side of the planet and land them and conduct a military operation here, even down here by the pole, right? If I want to go take the city next turn, instead of having to slog my way along this road, which might take me turn after turn, I can just pick up and go in a single turn, and I could take control of this planet next turn, or excuse me, take control of the city next turn. If I am not in control of orbital space, I'm going to have to walk. And meanwhile, my opponent, if he has control of the orbit and he has larger ships capable of conducting orbital bombardments, he's going to be able to bombard my force all the way down here as I conduct this movement. Okay, now maybe I have a shield. Maybe I can hunker down, protect myself. Maybe I have some of those PTS units, right? I've got a missile launcher. Maybe I move that with my army, provide me some shelter from orbital bombardment. But it's not a sure thing, right? It's not like the shield protects you completely, but you can only build a single shield on a planet. You can build as many of these PTS units as you want, but they're going to have to fight the starship that's trying to bombard your army. And if it loses, then you can't build another unit, right? You have to have a city in order to build a new PTS launcher. If you're invading a planet, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to import it. And if the enemy has control of the orbital space, you're going to have to take the orbit away from him in order to land more troops and continue your campaign. Not to mention the fact that if you have landed on a planet, you need food to maintain your forces. And if you haven't landed and taken control of a farm, like there's one right here, if you didn't make that part of your invasion plan to secure a source of food, your troops are going to starve because you can't grow the food on the planet, and you can't import it, because the enemy has control of space, of the orbits around the planet. So, I mean, you could see, I hope, why maybe this is something to think about if you're interested in the Horus Heresy, right? Like those are the kinds of problems that the Emperor and the Primarchs and just any Space Marine or any Imperial commander is going to have to think about. And I think, I, as people who are interested in the Horus Heresy, and I hope if you're interested in this channel, who are interested in maybe the more, not realistic necessarily, but the more grounded approach, um, considering things like strategy and tactics, and from a more realistic, more grounded perspective, then I think this kind of gives you that feel. And so I hope you try it out. There's a lot more that I haven't talked about. It is an old game, from 1997, right? So we have to make some allowances for a few things. Um, but the setting is so well integrated that it has so many interesting and unique mechanics. We talked already about the planets, the galactic map, voting to win, to become Imperial Regent. All of these things, are part of your strategic goals that you then use your military forces to accomplish, which is something the Emperor, in the Horus Heresy, is trying to do. Right there's all these things that are coming together, that he has to consider, that are beyond just the military aspects of the setting that we focus so much on. And so I really do hope you guys try the game out. It's like $10 on Steam. I think there's even a demo. I think you can play as much as you want with the demo. You just can't save your game. So download the demo, give it a try. And I know this has been a little bit of an unusual video. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it, actually, and talking about these things, these strategic realities of space, warfare. And so let me know down in the comments what you think. Would you like to see more in this series, not just video games, but maybe books or comics, or anything else you guys are interested in? Let me know. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.